swept away. Swept away.
Isn't it just like heaven when you walk into the room? There's not a thing that's hidden when every eye is on you. Can't get enough of your presence. It's the perfect point of view. Isn't it just like heaven? Come a little closer, stay a little longer. Doesn't it sound like heaven when you're singing over me? There's not a voice more constant, your melodies they never cease. Here I will stay in your presence, in my true identity. Doesn't it sound like, yeah, it sounds like, just like heaven. Come a little closer, stay a little longer. I can't get enough of you. Come a little closer, stay a little longer. I can't get enough of you. Let's sing this out together, holy and holy. You are holy. You're such a perfect Father. I worship you forever. Holy, you are holy. I lay down any treasure for us to be together. Holy, you are holy. Such a perfect Father, I worship you forever. Holy, you are holy. I lay down any treasure for us to be together. Come a little closer, stay a little longer. I can't get enough of you. Come a little closer, stay a little longer. I can't get enough of you. Enough of you. I can't get enough. I can't get enough. I can't get enough. I can't get enough of you. I can't get enough of you.
What fortune lies beyond the stars? Those dazzling heights too vast to climb. I got so high to fall so far, but I found heaven as love swept low. My heart beating, my soul breathing. I found my life when I laid it down. Upward falling, spirit soaring. I touched the sky when my knees hit the
holds nothing on the providence I know. No longer bound to things of wood and stone. When all I had to offer was my worst, you saw my heavy heart and loved me first. Your beauty staring down my brokenness. You chose to throw your heart into the mess. Compassion crashing down on what was left. You were there, and all this time, like a river running through my veins, you carried me all this time, like the splinters buried in your shoulder. You carry me now.
If ever now my heart cries hallelujah. If ever now in the wonder of your grace, 1,000 times 1,000 here's my soul will say.
Grace, you saw the crushing weight of all my hurts. You kneeled and wrote forgiveness in the dirt. As one by one the stones fell where they lay. As one by one my accusers walked away. With nothing left to throw, they made a cross. And knowing only love is what you saw, you were there. Come on! And all this time, like a river running through my veins, you carried me all this time, like splinters buried in your shoulder. Your love carried all my shame. Jesus, how my soul will praise you. You carried me all this way, like a diamond in the skies upon the crown. You carry me now.
If ever now my heart cries hallelujah. If ever now in the wonder of your grace, 1,000 times 1,000 here's my soul will say.
Listen to what you're singing. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me. Yeah. Never fail me. Yeah. And oh, come on, Circles, let's put our hands together. This part says, I see you move the mountains. Let's sing this out together. I see you move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I see you do it again. I see you move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way where there was no way, and I believe I see you do it again. I see you move the mountains, and I believe I see you do it again. You made a way, but there was no way, and I believe I see you do it again. I see you do it again. Well, Circles, thank you so much for singing out with us this morning. Y'all may be seated. Thank you.
Well, happy Father's Day. And I got this nice rod and reel for Father's Day 35 years ago. And I brought my life jacket. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. But, you know, it's interesting. You come here and summer at the lake. What do you expect at summer at the lake? Well, it's my joy to stand before you today and say, we're going to have some fun. Are you ready for that? So it's one of the great teachings of Jesus is at the Sea of Galilee, or called the Lake Gennesaret, Lake Tiberias. There's about 10 different labels for the lake. And I love going there because it is a place of fresh water, and it's amazing. But before we do that, I want to say Happy Father's Day to all you guys. And it's not just fathers who love to fish, a lot of ladies who like to fish. I think in my family I have a sister, she loves to fish more than anybody I know. So I don't want to be so sexist to say that fish are women, fish are people. But anyways, but Happy Father's Day. And, Juneteenth is the weekend. And, what does that mean? It's simply marks the legal end of slavery in the United States. And it's a new holiday, something to celebrate, something we need to be educated on a little better. So happy Juneteenth as well. So today we're in the second of 2 teachings, and it's about the lake. Last week, Pastor Troy did an excellent job. Dr. Say, great job delivering to us about following Christ. We are so fortunate that, that teaching last week, it just fits right into what I want to say. And what did he say last week? First of all, the disciples did not have to fill out an application to be a follower of Jesus. They didn't have to sign a statement of belief. They didn't have to join the We're going to Follow Jesus membership class. They didn't have to have, ready, a background check. He simply said, follow me, and they did. So our challenge last week, and I'm going to put this bowl down. It's got a hook on here. You ever got one of those in your finger? Yeah. If you fish, you do. And because I'm now moving and preaching, I'm going to take this jacket off. There we go. Pull my shirt out. Now we're back to normal. So last week, we were challenged, about following him. Today, our challenge is to move in relationship with Christ to a new level. More than just head knowledge, more than just being a Christian, being challenged to be a Christ follower. As a church, we're taking this to heart. We have a real simple theology at Suncoast. Our understanding is that Jesus wants us to love God and love others. And it's not more complicated than that. And loving God is seen. If you want to tell me how much you love God, show me. How do you show someone that you love God? By loving others. It's a lot easier to say, oh, God, I love you. I'm going to say it 100 times, God, I love you. And he looks down and goes, then love them, your neighbor. Love your family. Ready? Let's make it different. Love your spouse. More challenging. Love your kids. See, in John 13, 34 to 35, it says this, let me give you a new command. Love one another in the same way I've loved you. Love one another. This is how everyone will recognize that you're a Christ follower, when they see the love you have for each other. See, we're beginning to speak louder these days in showing our community how much we love them. At Suncoast, we went on a tour, at least Susan gave a tour last week for 10 people, and they found out a lot about Suncoast. And if you want to find out more about that, you can sign up for the next tour you'll hear about soon. But one of the things we talk about are our ministry partners. One thing at Suncoast that we don't think is in our best interest is to try to replicate what everyone else is doing. I grew up in a church tradition to where instead of Boy Scouts, we created our own scouting program. Instead of this, we created our own. We had a Christian version of everything. And instead of supporting the local food bank, create your own food bank. Instead of supporting the others that are doing it very well, do your own. So these are the ones that we support. One is Lifehouse Counseling. We provide space for Lifehouse Counseling because we think it's critical. And she's able to keep her fees lower because of some of the subsidies that we do. Mothers Helping Mothers. We're a drop-off place for Mothers Helping Mothers. This is a fantastic organization. 100% of what's given stays in the organization, no administrative fees, and we simply collect stuff. We do things with them because we think that's a wonderful thing. They give clothing away to people who need clothing. Save Child Coalition is a group that helps foster kids. And we do backpacks for them. We do a variety of things, but we really want to help them. They had a big party out here. We let them use our campus for one of their events. Save Child Coalition. We think fostering is a wonderful thing. Big Brothers, Big Sisters. They're a big organization. They don't need us, but it's kind of nice to promo some of it, just to say, hey, we're your promo center. We think if you want to be a big, it's an important thing for you to do. And then Blaze of Hope. Blaze of Hope. Hope was a little boy that was born about the time Suncoast was started, and his family was part of our church. His mom was here, and he died at a year plus of cancer. His mother never let the dream of Blaze die, and what she does and that organization is provide up to $500 for a family that has a kid that's at the hospital so they can help pay one of their bills. And we think that's an important thing. So Blaze of Hope is one of our ministry partners. But I want you to also know that just ministry partners are not the only thing we do. we do oil change, and you hear about that a lot, but once a month, we change the oil in people in our neighborhoods, needy people in our family or struggling families, we change their oil. It used to be only for single moms. Some of the dads who are struggling said, hey, can I get a hand up? And the answer is, of course you can. So now we change the oil, and any struggling family, if they need an oil change, and honestly, come in, they get a little extra car wash, and they get their car vacuumed. I want to get in on that myself. So I do. And you know how they do that? They make me stand around and act like I'm working. I say that exactly right for those who've been there. But oil change, we think that's important. We give away vehicles. We've not given away as many this year as we'd like to, but we're now collecting vehicles. If you have one you want to donate. When someone is taking a bus and has to make several stops before they can get to work, we want to make sure that person has a car if they can get it. This is not a big city to where public transportation is really that easy. So when we can provide a free vehicle to someone, and we've given away over the last 5 years between 130 and 150 cars. And that's a wonderful thing to give away. And we're giving a lot away still. Suncoast Cares is another part of our arm. It's an attempt to help people in a variety of ways. Sometimes we help a little bit with electric bill here or there. Financially, we try to support people the way we can. Why are we doing all this? Because that's what Christ's followers should do. We love our neighbors. We love our community. Tell me how. Well, I can tell you a dozen more ways. In children's ministry, they have a big bounce blast here so people could come to a free event so their kids could enjoy in air conditioning this wonderful event for free. It's something that would cost them maybe more than they could afford. So why do we do this? So that the community will know and that we know that they will know us and know how we love by the way we treat other people. Today we're taking an adventure with Jesus. We're going to spend the summer with him on the lake. I just came back from the lake last week. I could show you my family videos, but it probably wouldn't be as important as the one I'm going to show you. But today's story finds Jesus in a boat on the lake. A storm blows up. And what are we to learn from this? That the Jesus who calls us to follow him with our whole lives is also the Jesus who can help us face any and every storm that comes our way. The same disciples who left everything to follow Jesus still had a long way to go in their understanding of who he really was. When he calmed the storm at the lake, now how big is this lake? 13 miles long and 8 miles wide. That's a big lake, isn't it? It's called the Sea of Tiberias. It's called the Sea of Galilee, but it's also called the Lake Gennesaret. It was a lake. It's fresh water. It's really not a sea. It's fresh water. But the real question I want to ask today as we launch this teaching is, how do we weather the storms of life? And this week, someone asked me a question, and one of my favorite words popped up. And you've heard this word years ago, but I'm going to share it with you again because I want you to be able to use it. And if you teach classes anywhere, this word will help you as you begin to teach other students. It's a great answer. I honestly believe one word can answer almost every question. Now, wouldn't you like to have one word, someone asks you a question, you can't be stumped? I do. So I'm going to give you the question. Pastor, what is this word? Seriously? That's it. What do you mean? Seriously. Think of how many ways you can answer seriously. Is it hot outside? Oh, seriously? Oh, it's really hot. Seriously. You can change just the body inflection. It's the great answer to all the questions of life. Are you going on vacation again, Pastor? Seriously? Yeah, I am. But what about you? Are you enjoying your life? I think it's important. Today, one of the things I really enjoy about our area is the thunderstorms. Now, I want them to come regularly. It used to be at 4 o'clock, they'd show up, and now it seems like they're a lot more inconsistent. But I love the summer thunderstorms. We have some of the most beautiful clouds that you've ever seen. These big thunderheads, they're amazing. The storms are life-shaking. But the storms, they're bang, and you see it, and you feel it, and your electricity goes off, and, all kinds of things. But it cools everything down wonderfully. But the storm I want to talk to you about today is not necessarily the outside storm, but I want to talk to you about the inside storm. The storms that really shake you up. The storms have a way of coming to every life. Some interesting research shows us that some people succeed despite the storms when many others in the same situations fail. They've looked at everything from entrepreneurs whose businesses thrive when others are being crushed, to kids who survive and do well even though they grew up in an impoverished, gang-dominated neighborhood, and they seem to get out of it, and others do not. They even looked at mountain climbers in blizzards, some who keep going and some who turn back. The conclusion they came to is this: the most important factor to achieving success in life is not how smart you are, or what specialized skills you have, or even how strong your relationships are. What matters is how you deal with adversity. Now, have you ever had adversity? Of course you have. How we weather the storms, because the storms are going to come, and how we weather the storms shape our lives. So let me show you some information on the screen. I think you'll see it. These are some pictures on the Sea of Galilee. Let's see if you recognize some of the people who are there. Recognize any of those people? Those are all sun coasters. Let's see another one. Whoa. The one was from 2016. This is from 2019. Now, let's watch the video.
Morning, Suncoast. This is our first day in Israel. We're up in Caesarea in the north part by the Sea of Galilee. You can see behind me the boat that we're about to get on. We're just about to go on the same sea where Jesus went with his disciples when the storm blew up. This is where it was. It's going to be a great day. Before long, we're going to have fish together. Well, it should be a great, exciting time. But it's number one day. We wish you were here.
Let's see some more.
Sea of Galilee. It's a beautiful, sunny, it's a rainy day. Here we are on the Sea of Galilee. Here's what do you got to say about this trip?
Wow. I'm teary.
It's awesome.
Blown away.
Is there one more?
Okay, Suncoast, here we are at the Sea of Galilee. For those of you who are watching this from home, we're glad that you're here. They've learned lots of languages. We don't know what they're saying. Having a great time. Wish you were here. More later.
So those are some trips. And you see there was a younger version of me on that one video. Yeah, that was 5 years or 6 years ago. But we're going to do another one of those trips. And not this coming January, but the next January. So January 2024 will be my 7th trip to Israel. I'm just telling you now, if you have any interest at all, take that little card in front of you, put your name, I'm interested. It doesn't commit you to anything. It just puts you on the list so that when we begin to start emailing out, you can make a decision whether or not you want to go. It's about a week. You'll be with all Suncoast people. I'll be able to be on the trip. And so if you have any interest, this is your chance. And that card before you put your name, put Holy Land Trip on there, and we'll put you on the list. So on that journey, and those of us who've been with me to the Sea of Galilee or to Lake Gennesaret, it changes your perspective when you've been there on the water. So let's read the story together. And I think it's found in Mark chapter 4. That day when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with them. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" And he got up and said, "Seriously, I was in the middle of a big nap." He rebuked the wind and said to them, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. It's amazing to me when he said to his disciples about their fear. He said, "Do you have no faith?" They were terrified, and they asked each other, "Who is this that even the wind and waves obey him?" Now, I love this story because as a recap, and I go back and see some things, let's go over to the other side of the lake, and leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, listen, just as he was. So what do you mean? See, if you're going to take me along on a boat on the sea, I might be wearing one of these. Why? Because you just don't know. Those boats were not very big, not as big as the ones we were on. These are small boats, and they're out on the lake, and no life jackets, but he's in the back, and he's asleep on a cushion. And it says here, it was a furious squall. What does that sound like to you? Sounds like on Father's Day, the sound I heard when my kids were little, like when they fell and scraped their knee, or they got hurt, or they were fussing with each other. This furious squall, but this furious squall was a huge storm. The storm was more than just some summer thunderstorm. It was rough. And the way the wind comes through the mountains and hits that lake, it can turn a calm lake into a raging sea, just like that. Some of Jesus' first followers were fishermen. Simon Peter, Andrew, James, and John. They had been on the sea all their lives. They're from Capernaum, just a city on the north side. They could handle the storms, but it seems like this one even had them startled. There are storms that come to all our lives. Maybe a storm like this, you love someone and they pass away. Or maybe you love someone and they hurt you. Or maybe you get that phone call that you wish you'd never gotten and it's bad news on the other line. Maybe it's from a police station or somewhere else, from the hospital. When a doctor says, well, we've discovered cancer. Or maybe for you, it's the Dow Jones going like this and it's a financial concern, some issues. Or maybe it's something in a relationship where someone leaves, or maybe there's no reconciliation. You've had to deal with this daily now for years, and there's no relief in sight. I talked to an older lady the other day. She was telling me about her husband who's been gone many years. She said she'd get ready to go to church, and a lady come pick her up, and she said she'd go out and get in the car with bruises all over her face. And she said, what happened? She said, well, my husband got a little rough with me. That's a storm. And as we talk about the life of Jesus by the lake, listen carefully. We can learn about life. This story is about the routines of life, how God wants to help us learn to weather the storms that will come. And I have 4 questions for you today. They're simple questions. They're in your notes. You can fill in the blank if you want. But here, let me give you the 4 questions. 4 questions that we need to ask, or they ask. The first one is this. The disciples asked Jesus, don't you care? See, the Bible isn't some set of sterilized spiritual stories. It's real people who had real actions in real life situations. And the summer at the lake is the most real teaching about actual events that happen that we have. It's full of these kind of stories. His disciples doubted Jesus' concern for them. Why? Because he was asleep. Why did they ask Jesus this? The boat is sinking. Where's Jesus? Jesus is sound asleep in the back. Do you know people that, he must have been a heavy sound sleeper, wouldn't you think? A storm's blowing up, they're all excited, he's sound asleep. Do you know people, say, well, I know somebody who could sleep just like that. I mean, they're such sound sleepers. You hear me often talk about my cousin Paul. Call him Cuz, we're the same age. He's as close to me as a brother, and we grew up together. He provides me with some amazing stories, so if you're watching this today, Cuz, this is for you. Many years ago, he bought a mobile home park in Tallahassee, near Tallahassee. And he went into work after he bought the company, and there's a little discrepancy over another guy was trying to buy it who worked there. And the other guy had loyalty. So when my cousin went in that day, within the first 2 or 3 days, everybody that worked in the entire staff walked out and quit in loyalty to the other guy. And my cousin said he just paid a lot of money for a business, and he doesn't know how to run it, and he has no staff. I called and talked to him every day just so he could vent and talk about it. Then one day I decided I need to drive up and see him, so I drove to Monticello area, and I went up to see him, and I talked to him. It was a weekend. I said, look, let's go to this lake house, this house in the woods, not a lake house, but let's go to this house, and we'll camp there, and just to get away. I wanted to have him just decompress a little bit. And we were sleeping in this room. We're talking rough. I mean, no one sleeps in this house. It's just a little house in the woods. And the twin beds are so close together that I had my flashlight between the beds, and my arm would touch both mattresses to get the flashlight. That's close. But he's my college roommate. We grew up together, no big deal. But in the middle of the night, he starts talking. And this is what he's saying. And I begin to realize he is still at the office in his dream. And he's sleep talking. And this is what he's saying. Yes, ma'am. I understand. It's a service call. I'll get someone out there as soon as I can. I'll take care of it. Yep, no problem. No problem. I'll get there. And I'm up on one elbow looking at him going, he really is having this conversation. So I called him. I said, Paul, wake up. And he said, can you hold for a moment? Yes, what is it? I said, wake up. You're having a terrible dream. And he said, oh, thank you. Now that's a deep sleeper. And that's just the beginning of the stories I have to tell you about him. But I don't know if Jesus was a deep sleeper or what. But sleeping through a storm like that, while the boat looks like it's going to sink, no wonder they asked Jesus, don't you care? When the storms of life come to you and me, there are times that we wonder, God, where are you? Don't you care? Maybe we're afraid. Maybe we're not in control. Maybe it's not looking too good. I think that on some level, if we're following God, if we've said yes to be a Christ follower, or if we're drawing closer to God, sometimes we think that God should protect us and not allow storms to come our way. But listen to what Jesus says in John. He says, in this world, you will have trouble. In other words, in this world, you will have storms, but take heart. I have overcome the world. What did he mean by that? I can take you on a journey where the storms in life can be calmed no matter what's going on the outside. There's a peace that can be found on the inside. You know, it's okay for us to be honest with God about our doubts. It's also important. In the story, the disciples asked Jesus the question, don't you care? It's interesting if you search the Bible for the word cry. They were crying out. The word comes up over and over again. In the book of Psalms, more than 50 times the word cry shows up. And most of the time, it is crying out to God in pain, doubt, and confusion, asking, don't you care? So if it shows up that many times, it's probably very natural in our lives too. In the storms, it's not okay to cry out to God with whatever you're feeling. It's also important. It's not only just okay to do that, but it's important to do that. Think about it. Part of having a close relationship with someone and sharing with someone is letting them know what you're feeling. Why should our connection with God be different? We should cry out to him with our doubts and hurts and confusion. And here's what I want you to hear. He can handle it. Should we cry out? That's what those of us who are Christ followers do. It's part of the process. When the storm comes, I've learned to pour out to God that which is in my heart. It makes me aware of just how close he is. So let's go through the story. The disciples cry out to Jesus. Jesus wakes up and he speaks just a few words. And amazingly, the wind and waves begin to calm down. He takes care of this storm in just a few words. So let me give you the pattern. I wish this worked. It doesn't, but this is the pattern I want to work. I cry out to God. God does a miracle, then it's all good. Perfect. But I grew up thinking that's the way it worked. And I grew up thinking that was the norm, but it's not. For the disciples in this situation, Jesus calming the storm wasn't the end of the lesson, which leads me to the second question that's in your notes. After he calms the storm, Jesus asked, why are you so afraid? Often we assume that Jesus is telling them they shouldn't be afraid. And he's kind of getting on to them for being afraid. I don't think that's what he's trying to say. When he asks, why are you so afraid? It seems that he is trying to help them see something. So why were they so rattled by the storms? They were used to handling storms. This one was beyond their control. I love this story. Why? Because it applies to my life. When the storms hit, we do what comes naturally. When the storm hits, I was in North Carolina on the lake last year, and the storm blew up, and I mean, it blew, and those mountain storms come ferocious. And we had one of these little easy pop-up tents, 12 by 12, and on the dock, I'd screwed it down to the dock, and the storm blew up. And I mean, when it blew up, we looked out and said, we got to get down to the dock. And we ran down the house, and we had these big floating things, it's like 12 by 12, you can put 6 or 8 people on it. It was flying into the air like a sail, came down on one of the dock posts and put a hole through it as big as your arm through the inflated part. The tent then began to twist and screech, and I was trying to get it off the dock, and by the time I did, it was completely destroyed. Why? Because the storm blew up. And what do we do when the storm comes? I can take care of it. Just give me, and I thought, if I'd just been there 5 minutes earlier, I wouldn't have suffered all this damage. I would have fixed it. I would have taken care of it. But what do we do when the storm comes up? We try to take care of it ourselves. We try to fix it ourselves. We try to weather it on our own. We try to handle everything because, after all, most of us are very much into self-reliance. You ever said this? I can do it myself. I don't need any help. I can handle this. I'm okay. Now, every father in this room should be squirming. Because how many times guys just want to fix it? It's their nature. I mean, you go to the self-help section and it used to be at the Barnes & Noble, but you go to any Amazon, it's loaded with ways to fix our own problems. But when it comes to the really big storms of life, self-help is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction of terms. When the big storms of life come my way, I turn to self-help. What suggestions do you have, self? Well, that's good. What ideas do you have? Well, that's good ideas. But are you going to be able to fix it? No. Self is often, I'm talking about the small self in our lives, it's unreliable, it's undependable. It says, I can't get it done. But you know what self-help says? Try harder, work a lot, have another drink, take a pill, get high. Self-help says go shopping. Why? To escape the pain. Self cannot calm the storm or stop the pain. See, if self-help were the answer, then Jesus would have given out an Amazon gift card to every one of us for $25. So look, just order a book for your Kindle, have a latte, have a nice life. It's that simple. When the storms come, we shift our understanding and realize that God dwells in the boat of my life and my trust and confidence is in Him. It seems like He's saying, you need to trust me because you can't get through this by yourself, only with my help. When I learn to trust God, it serves me better. Now, Pastor, you're still going to try on your own? Of course I am. But at some point, I need to realize that it's not just me, but it's the Spirit of God in me that makes a difference. Which leads to the third question. Jesus asked them, do you have no faith at all? Again, this may seem like a scolding question, but it's really not. He's trying to remind them that they could trust Him in the storm. They'd already seen everything He could do. And as soon as things come apart, they begin to panic. They'd seen Him heal diseases, perform miracles, do many things. But it's like they suddenly forgot, the only thing I remember is the latest tragedy of my life. Everything else falls in the background. So He says, do you have no faith at all? He wasn't kicking them in the shins. I think He was trying to get them to focus. Don't you realize who's with you? I'm going to come through for you. The key is not waking up God to weathering the storms. The key is understanding He's already there. There have been some times in my life that I've worried, but it becomes short-lived when I pause to remember who's in the boat of my life. So what's the antidote to worry? Trust. Another word that's just all over the place in the Bible and Psalms is this word, remember. Remember means to intentionally bring to mind and dwell on what God has already done for you. Remember what it felt like when you had no hope and you found Him. Remember when the storm came and He brought you through before. Whatever you're going through today, I want to tell you that God is with you, which leads to the last question. The first Christ followers asked, who is this? In our life, the main thing God wants for us is not just getting us through another storm. He wants us to draw closer to Him, to a deeper, more personal, fuller understanding. But here's where I want to talk about today, just for a minute. Too often what we want is a fix-it God. Fix my problems. I pray you fix it. I pray God fixes it. I remember a man who had been married 60 years. And he came to me and he said, my wife and I've been married 60 years. And she was telling me her problems. And I was telling her how to fix it. And she said, his name was Dan. She said, Dan, I don't want you to fix me. I just want you to listen to me. Father's Day, good lesson. They don't want you to fix them. They just want you to listen to it. But sometimes we want to fix it God. I pray God fixes it. I wake Jesus up with my cry because I want Him to fix my situation, but I want you to hear me very carefully. Jesus wanted them, why are you so afraid? Don't you know I've always been with you, always will be with you? The truth in the story is not about God fixing the storm, but it's about reminding them that God is always in the boat of their life. Some people want to wake him up. He's asleep. Is he going to let us drown? That's a fix-it God mentality. When I was a teenager, I went to church often. And my pastor, a guy that I loved dearly, later I became his pastor, he'd say this at the end of many sermons. He said, you know, when you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. And he'd start going down that road, and he'd go, oh, here's the same thing again. When you get to the end of the rope, tie a knot and hang on. Persevere, hang in there. Then one day, it clicked, something different. When you get to the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. And then I began to realize, God is the knot. And when I begin to hang on to him, my whole perspective changes. So no matter how long it takes, no matter how long it lasts, God is with me in the boat of my life, and I'm simply going to cling to him. Psalm 89 says this, O Lord God Almighty, who is like you? You rule over the surging sea. When its waves mount up, you still are there. See, I think it's important for us to understand that God loves us. He cares for us. He's in the boat of our life, and he wants us just to hang on to him. Can I pray for you? Father, on this day that we celebrate Father's Day, we think about the fatherhood of God. We think about the blessings of life. We're grateful for all the moms that are here too. But Father, our prayer today is our lives would be so open to the presence that's already in us that we would grasp hold to what is already there. May Christ be honored today as we spend this time with him at the lake, we pray in his name. Amen. Would you stand with me? I want to tell you a story in closing. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, my cousin, who I just mentioned, came down from Tallahassee. He had lived in Homestead for many years, and he needed to go back to Homestead, so I rode with him to Homestead to see a house. And when I went there, I visited a home that I had not been back to in many years, but a home that in 1992, when Hurricane Andrew hit, I went down there. I had a van loaded with generators and stuff. We brought supplies. I stayed for about a week as a first responder in Homestead. And I went to the same house I'd been to. The last time I was there, I was hooking up a generator to their well. And also, I was climbing up on their roof because a trailer, like a camper, but the only thing was left looked like a boat trailer. The frame was there, and I was helping roll a trailer off the roof of their house, if you can imagine. I drove over to where my cousin lived, and I remember walking up on the top of his house, up on the roof, and looking around his neighborhood during Andrew and seeing not one leaf on a tree and not one shingle on a roof. My cousin had all the plywood on his house, and no one else, it seemed, had the same predicament. He was in the best of shape. As I looked around, I just saw the trusses, and I walked around, and the water had come in and did so much damage. But I began to say, cuz, why is it that you have all this roof deck and they don't? He said, I put plywood with big lags on the outside. Then he said this. He said, I kept the storm out of my house. Because you can keep the storm out of your house, you keep from blowing your roof off from the inside. See, the crisis is not the storm on the outside, but it's the storm raging on the inside. And it's not Jesus who needs to wake up, but I need to wake up and realize he always has been and always will be in the boat of my life and your life too. Weather forecast, 100% chance of storms ahead. Guaranteed. Spiritual forecast, God always dwells in the boat of our lives. Put your trust in him. Seriously. He loves you today, and so do I. God bless. Thanks for coming.